Hello, LinkedIn. Welcome to a brand new show on the LinkedIn News India page, where we bring to you the news and views that really matter to you. I'm your host, Abhigyan Chand, and I'm part of the LinkedIn News team in India. After a rough 2020 that most of us would simply like to erase from our memories, there is finally some hope and optimism on the horizon. Vaccines are getting rolled out across the globe, and there is a semblance of normalcy coming back. But there is one sector that was the first to fall and is the last to rise. We are talking about the travel space. And when I say travel, I mean aviation, hospitality, tourism, and other allied industries. 2020 saw a lot of these businesses face severe financial difficulties. A lot of the jobs were lost across the ecosystem. The damage was really, really heavy. Will 2021 be any different? Will we see some of those jobs come back? Will hotels, airlines, tourism agencies, big and small, will they see some turnaround in their fortunes? And who better to ask all these questions than Deep Kalra, the founder and group executive chairman of Make My Trip, who is here with us today. Welcome to the show, Deep, and really appreciate you taking out the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Abhigyan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Members who are joining us, members who are watching us, this is an interactive session. If you have any questions for Deep, please put them in the comment section and we'll try and pop them up for Deep to answer. If you have any questions, if you have any insights to share with other members, do that. Let's keep it as conversational and as interactive as possible. So Deep, without further ado, I would get to my first question. And this is not about jobs, nor is this about business. My question to you is, when was the last time you took a vacation and where to?
Yeah, it's a good start. And I'm very happy to let you know that I've managed to do actually 4 trips during lockdown and now. So clearly, if we are asking people to travel, I do believe we should be traveling ourselves. So the last trip was actually to Alwar, to a lovely new property called Aman Bagh, which is Aman Bagh, which was exactly, I think, 2 weekends ago. So not so long back, or maybe 3 weekends ago, sorry. It was a group, so it was about 4 couples and kids and all. So it was a wonderful trip. But the one I really want to talk about which was a very memorable and nostalgic trip for me, was over New Year's when we went to Kashmir. And I went back after a really long time to Gulmarg. It was just stunning. It had snowed just 2 days before. The beauty was just breathtaking. And I was kicking myself why I waited so long to go back to Kashmir, a place where I used to go as a kid a couple of times in the summers, but going in the winter over New Year was very special. And it was really nice to see tourism come back. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a big kind of snow festival going on in Gulmarg, the winter festival. And we are seeing quite a few people now actually looking to go there. So there are some amazing places in India, which I would encourage a lot of people to travel to. There's lots one can do.
That's awesome. So it's a real sign that things are slowly coming back to normal, and there is no dearth of domestic destinations for people really looking to get out of their homes and basically explore a little bit. So thanks for that, Deep. And today we are going to discuss the future of the travel and the tourism industry.
But garbled a bit. So you'll have to repeat that.
Yeah. Sorry, I think there was a bit of...
Yeah, it could have been either side, but now I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, so I said that it's great. It's a sign of things getting back to normal. And that's really good for the ecosystem in general, for the industry in general. We are going to be talking about the future of the travel and tourism industry in 2021 and beyond. But for a moment, let's revisit the horror that was 2020. Really, we saw thousands of businesses face a lot of financial difficulty, and there was, we have some data here on your bookings and revenue during the pandemic. If we could have that on screen. So we can see bookings. We can see the sharp fall in the April-June quarter. That's I don't think I've seen a steeper drop than this. And then there was a bit of a recovery in the following quarter. And we also have something on revenue, if we could display that quickly. Uh, a near 95% dip in revenue in the April-June quarter. And there was some recovery again in the July-September quarter, but a full recovery still seems a ways away, right? Uh, so now we are 9 months into the pandemic, and it's clear that the pandemic is here to stay. It's not getting away anytime. It's not going away anytime soon. So would like to understand from you, how has your business strategy really changed in the last 9 months, and also tell us about that shift, from an expansionary mindset to really hunkering down and focusing on some of the core areas of business. And if you could just give us a sense of that.
Yeah, sure, Vigyan. And indeed, it's painful even to watch this, even though I've lived through this whole last 10 months of absolutely very, very difficult times for the company and for the industry. And I think we're no different from any other travel company in the world right now. But like all entrepreneurs should, I think I'm more focused on looking at the future. And I can assure you that this trend that we are seeing, albeit small, of the pickup that you notice on the graph, whether it's for bookings or if it's for revenue, and you're seeing this move from April to June quarter, the quarter which we reported, and really I said it half in jest when I called it a lack of earnings call and not an earnings call. That's what it was. It was a 95% dip in revenues. That's the nature of travel. Nothing you can do about it. Travel in the pandemic. And then the next quarter, we were at about 20 odd percent of revenues from pre-COVID times, which was definitely way better, but tiny. But if we look at recovery thereafter, and I can't give you company figures till we report, and we're reporting in a few days' time, so I wish you will update that. But more importantly, what I can share with you is the industry, because these numbers are public. So if we look at December, and the quarter we're reporting is going to be October, November, December, which traditionally is a peak quarter,
Right.
December air traffic numbers for the domestic industry, air traffic is back actually to about 56% of pre-COVID levels. So that's not bad, I would say, when it comes to passengers, so bookings. Revenue is slightly different story, but this is the lead-in indicator as we always look at it. If we look at hotels, it's over 50% as well. And then if you add to it alternate accommodations, villas and apartments, etc., it's 50% plus. So clearly travel's coming back, leisure travel's coming back. People want to get out. They've been fettered in for far too long. So there's no question. So the improvement is secular and it's moving only in one direction. So I do believe that in the year 2021, at least from a company point of view, we should be able to see tremendous recovery. Of course, everything has to go well. Vaccination drives have started around the world. We can only hope and pray that these stay, and there are no, rude shocks or hiccups that we get. But we can't control that, and that's a good segue into talking about how we dealt with this, how our mindset changed. So fundamentally, when we were hit with a lockdown, it's not like we had no warning. So we're not in China. We weren't the first hit. We had warning from China. We had warning from parts of Europe like Italy and Spain, etc., etc. And so I think we were getting prepared. I can't say we were fully prepared. So, when you can't do much about one side of the P&L, which is revenue, you really have to focus on the other side of the P&L, which is really costs. I think we kind of addressed that fairly well in hindsight. And proof of that is, I wish you had included a third graph also in your two graphs. And maybe you have it and someone can pull it up. You guys are pretty good at this. And you should look at the net burn every quarter. And you'll be amazed that despite such a dramatic fall in revenue, the net burn in the last quarter that we reported, which is July, August, September, we actually improved that over the last quarter and over the same quarter last year. And that confounded a lot of people. And they said, how is that even possible? And that's possible if you put a maniacal approach on costs. And when I say maniacal, that's exactly what it was. So we addressed every element of the cost line. We started with obviously the large variable costs. There was no question marketing had to be cut. We looked at other variable costs, and PG or payment gateway costs go hand in hand. So that obviously came down as bookings came down. However, there are many semi-fixed costs. So if we look at semi-fixed costs like outsourcing, etc., we accelerated bringing those down as much as possible. And we also learned and taught ourselves how to manage our customers remotely. And we did that a lot with technology and even with people, etc. That was, I think, we were able to do that. And then finally, there was rental and people. And there was rental of office spaces, which we rationalized and we continue to rationalize because it's pretty clear that one of the biggest learnings of the pandemic is that I don't think we're all going to come back and work in the same way always. I think there's going to be a difference and we should react to that. And there's little point in paying for space if you're not using it. Office is open, but it's voluntary. And I don't think we get more than 10% people on any particular day coming into office. So people are working from home, but that's okay because we can afford to get work done from home. In fact, productivity was pretty high in the early part of the pandemic, and I'll explain how we did that in a bit.
All right.
Then finally, it came to people cost, and that's the toughest one. It's obviously the one where you don't want to let anyone go. As any leader, entrepreneur, CEO, I don't think you want to let anyone go. We tried to do that pretty hard for 2.5 months. We fought that, and we said, why don't we take a very socialistic approach to this whole thing, and we actually asked people to take salary cuts. We started from the top, so Rajesh and myself took 100% salary cut, which continues actually for 6 months. Even thereafter is really a fraction, which is fine. Leadership team responded with 50% salary cut, and we went down to managerial level with 10% salary cut. So that enabled us to not have to let go people for a period of time. But after almost a quarter, it became painfully clear that this is going to go on and on and on. And we were actually hurting some of our colleagues who were there in the company working very hard, particularly technology, product, user experience, business roles. They were really focused on building stuff which would serve us well when travel would come back. And they were actually going through burnout. And we ended up hurting them by making them take salary cuts, whereas they were working at full tilt, 100%, if not more. There was burnout happening. And then we were hurting the company because some of these people started to get offers from other industries which were doing pretty well. And if you're in tech or you're in product, you're pretty much, industry agnostic. So I think that was hurting us. So eventually we had to take the hardest call, at least for me in 20 years of Make My Trip, of asking about 10% of our workforce to go.
Right.
Thankfully, thereafter, we haven't had to do any cuts, and now things are only better. But that's one thing which is very hard to shake off. So it was very difficult. We tried to do it in the best possible way. We made it easy for the long timers. We helped them not only officially, but we helped them personally. But it's a horrible one and big learning for me. And
Right.
if I can just give a message to other younger leaders out there, I think when you ramp up in good times, be really careful that there could come a time very suddenly where you might have to let go. So we should be very mindful about ramping up and hiring. We should try to variabilize the costs as much as possible. Really, it's very easy to say, but when you live through that pain, you realize how important it is to keep costs as variable as possible.
Right. So mindful hiring really is the advice coming from Deep, because in times of austerity, at the end, you might have to trim people costs also. And I will talk more about that, Deep, but we are beginning to get lots of comments from our members. Aparajita ji is asking about the new set of skills that hospitality graduates need to develop to adapt to the new travel, tourism, and leisure industry. And she's also asking about travel agents. What's your take on ruling out travel agents with technology? So a bunch of questions coming up. Would you like to take that on
Yeah,
the
it's a
upcoming
great question from, happy to take that, Abhigyan. So I think it's a great question from Aparajita. I think she's absolutely right. This is a time for the industry and people who are working in it to think about reskilling themselves. I come from the online part of the industry, the technology part of the industry, but our company also has a lot of core travel professionals. These are people who understand travel, who make travel products, who understand the booking and the reservation for ticketing, and who deal with our hotel partners. Some of them are also from travel. I think the one skill I would make it imperative for everyone to learn would be to actually, even if you're in the non-online side, I can't expect you to become a technologist suddenly, that's not possible, but is to be more analytical. I think to take courses in analytics, lots of them available online, some tremendous resources we have today, whether it's Coursera, Khan Academy, many others. Take courses in analytics, whether you can apply that to business or anything else. I think most people will expect that and it'll serve you very well. So I think traditionally travel and tourism didn't do that. They're not that difficult. The word is not as scary as it sounds. Get into it with the version 1.0 and slowly scale up. I think it'll hold you in good stead. The second one is really around, of course, be agile and things are changing, but be well versed with these changes. Product management is a very interesting skill. People think only engineers should have it or people who've been in product management. Guess what? Product management as we know it today did not exist 15 years ago. It just didn't exist. There was no specialist in product management, definitely not in India, maybe very few in the world. So, what did these people do? There were no courses for it. These were the people who were willing to go really deep into the online side of the booking experience. As simple as that. If you're on a LinkedIn platform and your company wants to use LinkedIn and you're in HR and you've subscribed for this wonderful platform, the pro version, the more hours you will spend on it, the more you will learn on what you can do. And actually, it takes hours and hours to do it. Similarly, if you're in online booking and you work with Make My Trip or with GoIBibo or with Redbus, any of our companies or any other online travel company, the more time you spend on your own platforms, app, website, as well as your competitors' platforms with real queries and experimenting and trying out and seeing what is working, what is not working, the more you'll become conversant in it. The more you'll realize there are nuances and really God is in the detail when it comes to online. These small changes with front-end interfaces make a big difference. Why do people do that? You can learn from some of the best companies out there, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Facebook. You can learn so much by interacting and seeing what's going on and what's new. I think what really helps is to stay abreast with what the youngsters are doing. So I definitely am not from the Insta generation and I'm still learning, but I'm learning that from my kids, one of whom is a teenager, one is into her 20s. And I'm learning this from them. And I can tell you that's how people are thinking. And there are user experiences there which can be put to good use even in other platforms. So I think you can almost understand how people are now navigating their way online. So I think there's a lot one can do. One can learn online from courses, be online just yourself. Nothing is stopping you from spending 10 hours and scoring over all the websites in your domain out there. Let's say you're a hospitality graduate and in hotels. Why won't you look at some of the leading websites both in the world and in India? And there's so much you can learn from them. What are they doing well and why are the other websites not doing it? And maybe you can take it to your company and say, I've compiled a list, I have a small presentation of 10 things we can improve on our website. I can promise you someone will be quite impressed and they might give you a chance to make a lateral shift there. So lots one can teach.
That's really wonderful advice, Deep. Analytics, project management, and really keep yourself abreast with the latest happenings in your space and what's really a hot skill. That's the advice coming in from.
Sorry, I have to make a small change. Product management is what I spoke about. Project management is a different cup of tea, but I'm glad you brought it up. Project management is also a very important skill which can be learned. A few simple softwares that people use, and you can actually pick that up. So I'm glad you brought it up. So product management separate from project management. Familiarize yourself with these terms. You might be good at some of these. And then I think there was a follow-up question about travel agents, and I think it's a very valid question. I think the world of traditional travel agents has been challenged for a while now, and clearly by the online medium. So a lot of traditional travel agents already moved away. They've stopped doing ticketing because they realized in domestic ticketing, there's no money unless you do it automated like we do. And they started getting into value added services, which is a very good idea. So they started getting into high end holidays where you need a lot of hand holding, bespoke holidays. So you're actually customizing holiday for people. I think that's big. Cruise bookings is big. Visa help. Again, this is something very hard to do online. And I say that even though we've managed to take visas of about 15 countries online, at least the application, but the rest of the 200 odd countries are out there, which is offline. Passport work. There are a lot of these things which actually still need physical help. And I think travel agents who have morphed, who have pivoted, have done very well when they've got into the high value add game. But the basic game on ticketing for air or for hotel reservations, I think is going to move online and continue to move online. So just to give you a stat, today, more than two-thirds of all the tickets in our country, domestic air tickets, are booked online. Two-thirds, 65, 66, 67%. And in hotels, it's still small. Only 10% is online. But when we have this conversation 1 year from now, that number might have doubled.
Great. So members who are joining us, who have just joined us, and members who are watching us, this is Deep Kalra of Make My Trip, who is with us today. If you have any questions, please keep them coming. We are getting lots of comments, Deep, and there is something that Anushi Verma is saying, that pandemic has significantly changed tourist attitudes, shorter travels with own cars, vacations, cycling clubs. We'll definitely talk about that, Anushi, later. That's one of the questions I have for Deep too. For now, Deep, I would like you to answer this question from Praveen Iyer, who is asking, when do you expect to see pre-COVID levels between domestic and international? And when do you see a recovery really panning out as far as revenues and volumes go?
Yeah, sure. Good question, Praveen. I think for domestic, like I actually alluded to earlier, I would be surprised if we don't have a full recovery in 2021 when it comes to just levels. And I want to call that out again because while bookings are at 56% when it comes to air tickets, the pricing is slightly softer for obvious reasons. Fixed costs is higher for the airlines. They're very keen to get people back. Similarly for hotels, while we'll say recovery is 50% plus, but when it comes to ARR or average room rent, it's obviously a little softer right now. Great news for customers and great news for travelers. So you can get some very exciting new good deals, which you can go on today, which you will not get as things get better out here. So I think that's something we should keep in mind. International, unfortunately, is a different kettle of fish. So international depends on other countries accepting people from India in our case. Are they comfortable with it? What are the quarantine rules? And even if you look by and large internationally today, almost every country has some kind of quarantine rules. If they're doing very well with the pandemic, they almost don't want people. If they're not doing that well, but they are very heavy on tourism, then they need to get people because they want to get the economy kick-started, especially, you look at the countries which were open right through, or the first to open in the pandemic. Maldives. Maldives probably gets, bulk. I think the number is 80 to 90% of their revenues from tourism. They couldn't afford to stay closed. So they opened up, but they said, we'll do a testing regime. In fact, I must add that I think India has had a very prudent policy of accepting international visitors into India from the beginning, where we were one of the first countries which insisted on, we want an RT-PCR negative certificate taken in the last 3 days. And we've stuck to that. And I think it's been a good policy. In addition to that, recently, because UK saw a spike in cases and the new strain of more infectious virus was the concern, I think, we put further restrictions on people coming from the UK, rightfully so, where we said there'll be some quarantine, etc. So I think it comes down to that. Dubai was perhaps very pragmatic. And then suddenly over New Year, this new strain or this thing spread and a lot of cases came up in Dubai. And now they're coming down more strongly on people coming there. So I think it's something which will depend a lot on every country's policy, how they're dealing with it and their comfort. So, we speak this word called travel bubble has got quite popular. Right. Certain countries like Australia and New Zealand created a travel bubble long back. But, also if you look at Australia and New Zealand, it's a very unique structure. They are far away from the rest of the world, both islands or a bunch of islands. And, they managed to contain the virus quite smartly. So they said, yes, people can travel between back and forth. I think Hong Kong and Singapore tried something, again, two countries which have done a damn good job of containing the virus, but also very small populations, and you can do that. India is not an easy job. So I think for us to be traveling freely around the world, this whole year will go into recovery, and I would put my money on 2022 is when you get back to pre-COVID levels. I think this whole year on international, we'll go into recovery mode because it doesn't depend on us alone. It depends on what's happening in another country, and then how many international airlines are ready to fly, etc. But yeah, I think from here on, things should keep getting better.
So 2021 is going to be the year of recovery, and 2022 is when we can expect something concrete on this front. That's what Deep Kalra is saying for regarding the future of travel this year. Deep,
Yeah.
with the future of travel, still hung in the balance pretty much. Uh, we also need to talk about jobs, in the space. We have some headline graphs for you that really show the extent of the damage. If we can pull those up to 5.5 crore jobs, that was what the government told the House panel, and there were huge losses across the value chain. Aviation, tourism, hospitality, airlines, big and small. How soon do you see a revival in these industries? And what's your? I know we spoke about skills earlier, but what's your advice to professionals in these industries who have either lost jobs or who are on shaky ground? How can they ride out the crisis, and how can they future proof themselves against such black swan unforeseen events in the future?
Yeah, lots of questions, but let me see what all I can answer. So, yeah, indeed, the job losses in this sector have been the worst. This is an estimate. Some people say that number could be even closer to 7 crore, but either way, it's been just drastic and terrible. And mind you, a lot of this has happened at the bottom of the pyramid. So a lot of the jobs have gone where people were earning really at the bottom of the pyramid. And I remember compiling a lot of data in the early days of the pandemic for Niti Aayog of trying to get numbers of how many people in this industry earn less than 20,000 rupees a month, even 10,000 rupees a month. And we're talking about people associated with travel and tourism on the ground. So we're talking about, what about a tour guide who's entirely dependent? He's based in Kashmir or Ladakh or Northeast, and he's entirely dependent on tourism in the year for his livelihood. What happens to him? He pretty much had something else to stay alive because there was no travel and tourism. When I was in Kashmir over New Year's, I was on Dal Lake doing what you have to do, the customary boat trip, and many other people on their boats, fishermen or otherwise, would come up to us and talk to us, and were trying to sell us stuff, and were saying that basically we've had no income at all since the lockdown. And imagine how hard it would be to survive, because their entire business used to happen in those few peak months of tourism. This is the country over, so it's been very, very hard. What about a small travel agent, husband and wife, employing maybe two or three people or maybe five people? When business went out, in most cases, this SME enterprise would have furloughed their people and said, I'm sorry, there's no business, you better go home and we'll call you when business comes back. That's the reality. That happened to lakhs and lakhs of small enterprises. It didn't happen one off. When it happens to lakhs, and in each case, 10 people, 5 people, 2 people have been let off, that's how you get into the crores. The large companies, even a company like ours, which is well capitalized, we have the money, but after 2 months into the lockdown, we had to think about continuity, doing the right thing for our stakeholders, our other colleagues, our shareholders, etc. We had to let go of 10% of people of a total base of 3,000. We're talking about 300 people, very painful, but I know companies which have had to let go even larger numbers. So it's been tough, and these job losses are for real. And there's no easy solution. So how does an employee who has only done travel and tourism all his life or her life prepare for a black swan event like this? I think I go back to the earlier ones. If you have the capability to self-learn and get into analytics, that's great, but not everyone will. You just
Right.
have to be nimble and agile, and also pick up skills which can now work for other industries. Because very clear, travel and tourism stays hit. What if something like this happens again? What if there's a new strain of the virus which is worse? So can you actually deploy your skills? If you're good with people, can you get into something front end? Can you take your skills online? Can you get into allied sectors? So the retail side is quite allied sometimes to hospitality, good front end skills. While restaurants in hotels are shut, and restaurants outside also took a long time to open. However, ordering in became huge. So, Zomato, Swiggy, and the like saw a big boom, of course, because people were ordering in. Everyone was. So, can you get in work in dark kitchens, etc. If you're on the, if you're actually good at culinary stuff. So, just many places where you have to think out of the box and to say, where can these skills apply in an industry which is not that badly hit. So that's the way I would look at it.
So basically, have some of those transferable skills really going for you so that they can be deployed in allied sectors and sectors which are not badly hit.
And
That's
you know that, by the way, Abhigyan, the word you used is very, malleable, transferable skills is actually the new buzzword where people are saying, what are the skills that will be required for tomorrow? Forget the pandemic. Just what do people need to know? And they actually need to know many things, but most of all, they need to know on how to be flexible and nimble and keep learning. So I think that that's the other very big lesson. You can't say, I'm done with my studies now, I finished my college, and this is it, I'll never learn again. That's going to change for the next few generations. You'll have to keep learning because things are changing very fast. So I think you will have to reskill and retrain yourself almost every few years to keep abreast of what's going on, maybe study on the side. And maybe it's for the better, but definitely you can't sit back and say, I'm done with my studies and now is my time only to, work and earn. I think that's going to change.
yeah, so keep really reinventing yourself every
Yeah.
few years so that you're in sync with the changing demands of the industry. Thanks for that, Deep. There is Rinki Sharma is asking, what's your opinion on traveler confidence uh, being regained considering vaccination programs? And I have a question that's similar. What's like Rinki pointed out, the vaccination drive is well and truly underway, both in India and outside of India. But what are some of the key trends that you see emerging in the travel industry in 2021 and beyond, even as recovery happens?
Yeah, no, they're both linked questions. So let's take Rinky's question first. Rinky, we keep on measuring and asking and surveying our customers to see how's confidence, and we of course see bookings, kind of different lines of business or different kind of things people are booking. It's a good barometer into the industry because we're doing a large number of bookings across the sectors. So it's definitely at the highest it's been since March 2020. So that's the good news. It's never been higher. Vaccination program is one of the big reasons, light at the end of the tunnel, and just reducing numbers. So I think people are asking like, how have the infection numbers in India come down so suddenly? I don't have all the answers. You can say milder strain, you can say some kind of more immunity, etc., etc. But the reality is, our numbers, which were really high, we'd almost touched 100,000 new infections a day, are down to our last week average was 14 to 15,000 a day. So I think something is going right in Delhi, New Delhi, which is almost, you have to rub your eyes to say, really? Just 200, 300 new infections every day? But that's the number, and we have to go by the numbers. So that's giving a lot of confidence. The other thing which is giving confidence for people to travel is knowing people in your network who have traveled. So that really helps because people say, hey, so and so, my cousin traveled, my friend traveled, or so and so person has traveled. They came back, they're fine. So when I spoke to them, they said, yeah, you have to be very careful when you're traveling, whether in a train, a bus, a plane. You have to wear your mask, maybe wear a face shield. It's inconvenient, but once you get there, you're out in the open. And it was great. And we had to be careful when we met people. So I think people, the brave hearts, are doing that. This is actually a very good segue into your question, Abhigyan. What are going to be the new trends into travel, which we have seen already? Clearly, this is the rise of people wanting to be in lesser known places, away far from the madding crowd. So it's the rise of the boutique property. It's the rise of the villa. It's the rise of the independent kind of place, homestay, whatever you want to call them. Also, it's the rise of people going away from the big popular places because fundamentally you want to be as secluded as possible, but yet get what you need. So I
Right.
think eco-friendly travel, camping and glamping and hikes are going to be very popular again, and rafting even more than they've ever been. But even for people who don't want to do adventure sports, I think, one of the trips I did late last year was a drive to Kasauli. And, Alvar was a drive to, of course, Kashmir wasn't. And clearly driving holidays is very big. So people would much rather be in the safety of their own car or a hired car than be maybe in a plane or a train. So that I understand. And then when they get there, they want to be in places or they want to be in hotels which have very spread out spaces. So you can actually have your independence, but you're not one big box. So that's also changing quite a bit. I think we're going to see that. more and more going forward. So in some sort of ways, it might be a good thing where we decongest. Not everyone is flocking to the 10 best known hill stations in summer. They're actually now seeking lesser known places. Not everyone is flocking to Goa, well, around the year almost, but definitely not in peak time. But they're saying, hey, can I go to Ganpati Pule? Can I go to Puri on the other side? Can I go to lesser known places even in Kerala, etc.? So I think people are now thinking of going to different places. It's a great opportunity for domestic tourism. So I really think this is the year where domestic tourism can firmly establish themselves on the map.
Awesome. So that great opportunities for domestic tourism. And what I understand from you is also that it will democratize travel to a certain extent, because we'll see newer places where people would go to, they would like to visit. Deep, we are almost at time, but I would like to squeeze in one
Sure.
more question.
Sure.
I got a question from Ankit Sawant, who wants to understand what's your view on business travel, and really with remote work here to stay. And there's this sudden realization among corporates that, hey, we were probably doing a lot of unnecessary travel, and a lot of that can be accomplished. People are doing deals, entire companies are being sold virtually. So do you think that really means that business travel is going to be a lot less as we go forward? And when do you see a bounce back in corporate travel, if at all?
Yeah, excellent question, Ankit. And I'm glad you brought it up, and it's worth talking about because it's a very important facet of travel. Many players and hotels depend on business travel. A lot of airlines also, every day, people flying between Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Calcutta, Delhi, etc. Everyone's not going for leisure or visiting their friends and relatives. A lot of people travel for business. So clearly, business travel is hit and is going to take the longest to come back. In fact, a lot of multinationals have declared no travel for a long period of time, do everything over video platforms. A platform like this, it's just brilliant that we could connect and we can do this. What about work? I mean, I keep telling people around me, particularly my colleagues, imagine if this kind of pandemic happened 5 years ago when video telephony was in its infancy. I mean, the way we are doing meetings over any of the video platforms, whether it's Cisco's WebEx or Zoom or this one, it's just so easy, and it's become second nature to us. So I think we have to be thankful that it happened when doing video conferencing is easy. Clearly, the smart companies are going to ask themselves and their employees twice: do you really need to make this trip? And let me tell you, anyone who's traveled a few times for business after a while says, hey, listen, there's no pleasure left in it, right? No matter, even if you're flying business class, etc., no one wants to get up in an unearthly hour, spend the whole day traveling, etc., do a few meetings back to back, typically come back late at night or after a day. It's hard. I don't know anyone who really enjoys business travel after the first few times when it could be a novelty for some people. So I think people are going to ask themselves, if I could do this remotely, why not? Rightfully, you said, Abhigyan, IPOs have happened online. We've reported 2 quarters, and reporting our third quarter in a couple of days' time, purely online. Our investors are really appreciating the fact that they can reach out to us either through video or audio. And I think we're also asking ourselves, do we need to be making those roadshow trips that we need to, which are expensive. They take a lot of time. They also take a lot of energy. So I think this stays for a while where people will question every trip. There's a part of business travel which is called MICE, which is meeting, incentive, conferences, and events. I think that's also going to be challenged, because do people want to have 500 people in a hall? Not right now. That's the exact opposite. Right now, it's also illegal. You can't collect so many people. That being said, I'd like to caveat it with, I have seen how short public memory is. I have seen how quickly people rebound, particularly to go back to what they like to do or what used to happen. Post 9/11, our company was around in 9/11. I know that people swore, particularly in the US, that we'll never board a plane again. 1 month it took, everyone was back. Post SARS 2003, a lot of people said we're not going to travel, started wearing masks and traveling. In fact, those same people today probably are, most of those countries have recovered the fastest from the pandemic. So I think things will come back. There's an unputdownable zeal to get business. And that's where sales folks take over, right? So they'll be back saying, hey, listen, companies have to get back, etc. I need to go there to close the deal. Will it ever become normal again? Bill Gates feels no. I feel I'd like to beg to differ. I think it'll take no more than 24 months to come back to normal. So, inshallah, I'm right. Time will tell, but that's what I hope will happen
So 2 years is what you crystal ball gaze really into the future.
for business travel.
And hopefully business travel will be back to normal. Deep, there is one more question that I would like you to quickly answer from Linu Paulson,
Sure.
who is asking if you have a disability inclusive travel and tourism outlook for the future.
Yeah, no, Lino, it's a good question. I think we've been trying to do a lot of work on the booking side of it. I can't say we have reached the gold standard yet. We have worked with certain hotels as well, in India at least, to try to get them to be more receptive and to have more accessible places. Some of them do, many don't. We are also trying to get it included in the tourism charter and the tourism policy, because I think only if we have hotels as well as travel attractions, etc., which are accessible, can you talk about it? But our role to play is on two sides. I think to have platforms which are easy to use across. We've made some progress there, but not all. And some airlines have done a great job. I remember, I think Indigo was the first probably to do that, and they did a wonderful job with visually disabled folks could understand exactly what's going on, etc. And I also think there's a big role to play to make it easy to travel where we have a really long way to go in India. I think we can learn a lot from what's happened overseas, but it's clearly something where, when we do talk to policymakers, I'm also co-chairing CII's tourism committee. It's something which I'm keenly concerned about, and we do bring that up, and we hope that that'll become part of the policy.
Right. Thanks for a very comprehensive answer, Deep. I would like to ask you one last question before we sign off. Deep, you have seen several crises over the course of your career. Starting with the dot-com bust at the turn of the century, to the SARS breakout, to the Great Recession, which happened in 2008, 2009. What would your advice be if you were to distill that into a few words for young entrepreneurs facing this crisis? How can they manage to stay afloat, and how can they hedge against such unforeseen circumstances that threaten to flat businesses?
Yeah, sure. I think, like I mentioned earlier, my biggest learning from this crisis, which has probably been bigger than any of the others, due to the sheer uncertainty of it, right? Not understanding how long it'll go on, also how badly it's hit travel. So, my biggest learning has been how to ensure that all the costs that we ramp up when we're doing well are as variable as possible. Therefore, to use technology as much as you can, to have bots like we do, but can they be even better to service more and more people? So just variabilize costs. Try to minimize your fixed costs. Think twice before incurring anything which is fixed or near fixed in nature. Very hard to unwind. So I think that would be the biggest one, which I would like all of you to keep in mind. Also, do remember crisis cycles are going to be more frequent, sharper, but maybe shorter. So you're going to have other things are going to continue to happen. There's just no question. That is another very big learning from this crisis, that it's not indeed a black swan event. It might even be, like people say, gray swan event, or you might have to bake this into your every 5-year kind of plan. Something will go wrong. So be ready for that. If you have the flexibility or the ability, you might want to diversify in different industries. Easier said than done, I can tell you, because very often we get hard coded to one. But keep fixed costs low, and then when you're faced with these crises, you'll be able to then recover quickly, because you'll be able to say, okay, how can I take charge of the parameters in my hand? What can I do with them, irrespective of what's happening? So if your revenues dry up like they did for us, at least you are able to shrink your costs, hopefully in commensurate way, if not more. And if you can do it more, like we demonstrated in the last quarter, then you actually end up burning less cash. And thirdly, last but not the least, if you have the luxury, keep a little bit of extra fuel in the tank for a rainy day. I think that's important, and just keep that away, because you might need it, even when you're least expecting it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Deep, for some very valuable advice on that front. Thanks for making the time to appear on the show. And I really hope that members will get a lot of learnings from this session.
Thank you, Abhigyan. It's been a pleasure chatting, and great questions from you and also from a very engaged audience. So your members are definitely very engaged. More power to you guys, and looking forward to making sure you all travel very quickly.
Fingers crossed. So that was Deep Kalra, the founder and group executive chairman of Make My Trip, who talked to us about the future of the travel and tourism industry, his outlook on jobs, and how traveling is going to shape up in 2021 and beyond. We hope you really liked the show. Keep visiting the LinkedIn News India page for such interviews, such interactions, and also for our regular news coverage. Have a great day and happy Republic Day.